Hello, I'm Kimberley Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to the In Conversation With series, a series where I speak to notable figures in the realm of financial services. Listen as they share their personal journeys, thoughts on the industry, and advice for aspiring advisors. Hello and welcome to In Conversation With. Today I'm joined by Dan Boardman-Weston, and I'm going to let Dan introduce himself and give more of a backstory. So go ahead, Dan.
Hi, Kimberley. Nice to meet you. I'm Dan Boardman-Weston. I'm the Chief Executive and Chief Investment Officer at BRI Wealth Management. We're a regional wealth management firm looking after about £550 million of client assets. And I've been involved in the financial services industry for about 12 years now, give or take.
Wow. And I just looking through kind of your background, I know that it's not like no one's background that I've talked to while doing this series has been what I would be like a traditional path. There's no such thing at this point. So I know that you went straight from your A levels and then you joined BRI as a trainee. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so when I was sort of 18 and doing my A levels, I had no idea about the financial sort of markets or wealth management or what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to have a gap year when I'd done my A levels, and I really sort of fell into a sort of an internship at BRI. Mm-hmm. And the plan was it would just be sort of 3 months and I'd earn a bit of pocket money and then I'd go traveling and, do the stereotypical gap year thing. Yeah. And then go to university. I think I was going to go and study international relations somewhere, but I can't really remember. Yeah. But after a couple of months, the chief investment officer at the time who I was working under sort of said to me, do you want to stay on? And I thought about it. It's quite a big decision when you're that age and when all of your friends are going to university and they're all having a good time and getting drunk every night, all of these sort of things. But I thought about it long and hard, and I came to the conclusion that I quite liked financial services and I was enjoying what I was doing in relation to the stock market. And I thought I can learn on the job and do industry exams, and it means I don't come out of university with £30,000 or £40,000 of debt, and I am sort of on a sort of an accelerated path, maybe compared to my peers. So I took that decision in late 2011, and then really have been with the firm for most of the last 10, 11 years or so. But it was looking back, it was a tricky decision to make, because out of everyone who went to my school, I was the only person not to go to sort of university out of choice. Right. It was sort of ingrained in the mentality of, I think, of the school and maybe the education system at the time, that university is the only option for you. You have to go. There is nothing else to do. And so it was a tricky decision. But looking back from where I am now, it was definitely the right one for me. And I think it's pleasing to see more youngsters now recognizing that there are other things you can do apart from going to university, that, that's not the be all and end all. You can, join industry or an apprenticeship scheme or whatever it is, and be equally as successful compared to if you'd gone to university.
I think that is really interesting. And I think what I like about your story is that I think I'm from the same kind of generation where, I wasn't aware of any other option but going to university. I didn't know anyone who kind of went and did an apprenticeship and stuff like that. But I look at some of younger family friends who are just entering university now, and they're kind of doing, still going to university, but also doing it alongside an apprenticeship or an internship. And I think I now am quite a massive advocate against going to university, just because I didn't actually end up using my undergraduate. So I'm just like, go and get hands-on experience, which is what you did. But I think also in my mind, something like working in financial services back then, I would have thought it was something you needed to have a degree to even get into. So it's quite interesting that you were able to find an internship and be, a trainee portfolio manager, which I would think like that's something you get as a graduate, not someone who's just come out of their A levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I started off, as you say, as like a trainee analyst, trainee portfolio manager. And, it was to start with clearly the menial work. I'm not
Mhm.
I wasn't let loose on sort of making the portfolio decisions.
Yeah.
But you learn on the job, and then sort of coupled with the relevant industry qualifications, which I, went through, you
Hmm.
sort of pick it up, and a couple of years later, I felt I was in a pretty strong position. And to be honest, at the point where a lot of my friends were coming out of university, sort of 3 years post A levels,
Hmm.
I was in a stronger position at that time compared to them, because I'd got 3 years of experience, I'd got industry qualifications, and they were just starting to figure out what industry they want to be in and what they need to do for their careers going forward. So it definitely set me up well for my career so far.
Yeah, definitely. And I also saw that it seems like at BRI they do kind of appreciate your want and need and hunger for to further yourself, and that you went on to do a MBA as well.
Yeah, I mean, we take sort of training and development very seriously, and I think it's something we're really proud of, and I think we're good at. We can improve, and we've got some quite exciting plans around that for this year on training and development. But we do take it seriously, and in relation to the MBA, I got to a point in sort of late 2016 where I was really enjoying the investment side of things. I'm really passionate about investing, and I just find it really interesting. But I sort of recognized that I didn't just want to do investment for my whole life. I wanted to sort of broaden my skill set. And at that time, I was just sort of very focused on investments. And so I had a long think about it, and whether that included sort of moving firm and maybe going to London and doing something a bit different, and sort of gaining a broader skill set. But then I remember we were having sort of a consultancy project at BRI at the time, and one of the consultants sort of knew I'd had a chat with him about my thinking on things, and he said, "Have you ever thought of an MBA?" And I didn't know
Hmm.
what an MBA was, to be honest. I think it's still more of an American thing than a British thing, I think. But I looked into it, and I discovered that this would tick a lot of boxes. It would teach me about marketing. It would teach me about operations management. It would teach me about leadership. It would teach me about a whole host of different topics, which would give me a broader skill set. So I ended up leaving BRI in the summer of 2017 to go
Hmm.
and do an MBA at Warwick Business School full time. So I wasn't working during that period, and sort of really enjoying it. And at this point, the plan, there wasn't a plan for me to return to BRI like in the short to medium term.
Hmm.
So I was again sort of thinking about what I'd do post the MBA, and sort of where I'd fit in the industry, or maybe even a different industry. But then with sort of a bit of luck and a bit of fortune, I sort of found myself back at BRI in October 2018, and have sort of moved, gone from strength to strength since then.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And now you're kind of working as the chief investment officer and chief executive. That's a pretty great, like start from start to finish. It's a really inspiring story, I think.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, you don't, I think sometimes a lot of people can be. I don't think you necessarily appreciate when you're sort of maybe going through a journey, sort of what you've done and maybe how far you've come. And this sounds all terribly cliched, and I don't mean it to be, but yeah, when I sort of view it through the prism of the last sort of 11, 12 years as sort of where I started and what I've done and where I am now,
Mhm.
it is something I'm quite proud of.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be proud too. So moving on to kind of our current climate, financial climate, um, there's a lot of back and forth as to whether we're going through a recession. There's a lot of worries about, cost of living and inflation. But what would you say are your long-term market assumptions with investments?
Yeah, so I mean, 2022 was a very very poor year for investment markets. Depending on what sort of metrics you look at, by some accounts it was the worst year since 1870 for markets, equity and bond. It was very brutal and a confluence of factors that people will know about, inflation and interest rates and Ukraine and sort of post-COVID factors that culminated in a brutal year for markets. And where we sort of stand now is markets have recovered, somewhat from the lows that we saw back in September, October last year, but we're still in a very uncertain place. And there's always uncertainty in the world, every day, every year, and there's always uncertainty within investing. But at the moment, it does still feel like there is a heightened amount of uncertainty out there. And I think, our house opinion at the moment on sort of where we are in the investment landscape is that we still expect trouble and volatility in 2023 for two reasons mainly. One of them is recession risk, which you sort of touched upon. I think the UK is already in a recession. Looks like America may sort of enter a recession, but also slight fears about where interest rates will end up, how long they'll stay there for, and the sort of tail risk that inflation, may be stickier than markets are anticipating. And so it leads us to being, from a short-term perspective, pretty negative on where we are at the moment. But I think one of the sort of key tenets of our investment philosophy is a long-term approach. And everyone says they've got a long-term approach, but we really do try and stick to our knitting on this one. And the outlook for markets on a medium to long term perspective are as bright as ever. I just think 2023 is going to be pretty volatile for a period of time, and so sort of move forward with a bit of caution.
Yeah. And within that, I always try to find the bright side. So do you think that there are any opportunities that might be found in 2023?
Yeah, I think so. I think we feel that markets will take another leg down from here, and I think there will be opportunities in equity markets across the piece to make good investments over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. One of the bright spots that we found in markets over the last sort of 7 or 8 years is investing thematically, and we started doing this in 2016. And we don't sort of really go for these fads that come and go, whether it's robotics and AI and this, that, and the other. Thematic investing has got a little bit more challenging over the last couple of years because people are trying to maybe create themes where there aren't really themes. But anyway. We started investing in 2016 in healthcare as our first thematic investment because Western societies are aging. Your propensity to consume healthcare increases as you get older. Your healthcare needs get more complex, and health systems are breaking. You can see that at the moment with the NHS and the pressures the NHS is under. And so we've got a few sort of thematic investments within portfolios at the moment, and I suspect we will find some other ones this year from the the market volatility that we see, that we'll be able to gain access to some quite long-term investment themes that will hopefully deliver attractive returns for clients.
And when you're looking for those themes, what does that involve?
So we're really looking for how the world is going to be changing over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So we're looking for long-term structural themes. So one of those, clearly, as a big overarching one, is the world moving to net zero, and the climate, transition over a period of time. But that's a very, very broad theme. And so we'll be looking at sort of more specifically at certain factors underneath that. One area that we did invest in 2021 for the first time, after quite a lot of research, was in water and waste. In that, the planet's population is growing, and if you look at all of the statistics on how we're likely to move forward, the world has got a huge waste problem, which is only going to get worse. There's going to be, I think, by 2050, more pieces of plastic in the sea than there are fish, which is a pretty miserable and damning statistic.
Mm-hmm.
And also with climate change and population growth, availability of water is going to be, quite a challenging issue. And so for us, that represented quite an interesting investment theme, and one where we think we've got pretty good confidence in the way the world will move and the challenge that is there. And that represents a good sort of long-term investment opportunity. So we're on the hunt for those sort of very long-term themes that we can try and capitalize upon in portfolios.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it helps you cover all your bases. So we talked about, kind of a bleak outlook. And I'm sure, our audience are mostly financial advisors and financial planners. So they probably have some clients who may be coming to them a bit wary. And what would your advice be to those advisors who are like having these conversations with their clients, whether they want to, stop certain investments or cash in or, stop protection plans, something like that? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, emotions can play a large part in investing. And I think, one of the jobs of financial advisors, and I know it is for our financial advisors, is making sure clients don't do anything that is to their detriment and their sort of long-term financial detriment to their long-term financial goals.
Mm-hmm.
And you're bound to see, we're have seen it a bit that clients get nervous if markets fall. Or may want to, stop their contribution to their pension because of cost of living and other things. And so I think one of the key things is for advisors to hold clients' hands. And whilst past performance is no guide to future returns,
Mm-hmm.
It's quite interesting looking at the historic data on, prior slumps in equity or bond markets. And once you sort of go back far enough and you've got a suitable time horizon, returns, look pretty interesting. The longer your time frame is. I mean, I think based on historical data for the S&P 500, if you invest in it for one day, your chances of making money are 55%. So you're flipping a coin. If you buy one day and sell the next day, you might make money. 55% chance you might lose money. If you extend that out to sort of, I think it's 15 to 20 years, I don't think there's any time period over the last 100 years or so where you would have lost money. And I think that's the key thing, is that there's so much noise and uncertainty and volatility in the short term in the world, and we're all very focused on the short term. It's trying to keep that focus on the long term and why you're investing to start with and what you're trying to achieve. And that, as I say, is for us where the positivity is at the moment. And again, that links in with our thematic investments, where we're trying to strip out all of this short-term noise about interest rates and inflation and politics and this, that, and the other, about what is the world going to look like in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, and how should we invest to try and capitalize upon those opportunities.
Yeah, I think that probably has a lot to do with how, I don't know, like society has a current obsession with instant gratification. So it's obvious, it makes sense that we'd all just be like looking at what's happening now, as opposed to, looking in the long term, like delayed gratification. Later on, I'll be able to live comfortably and not have to worry about these things. Is there an aspect when you're dealing with, if you do deal with clients and stuff, where you look at like behavioral kind of aspects to talking to them? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's an area we need to get stronger on, but behavioral finance and psychology does play a big part in investing. And for us, it's about guiding clients through turbulent times, and also making sure they've got the information that, based on past data, what a really poor period in the stock market might look like for their investments, and making sure that they're as educated as possible about the pros of investments, which there are many, but also the cons in terms of over a short to medium period of time, markets can go down, as we've seen during 2022. And it's just trying to ensure that that investment clearly is suitable for clients, and they go in fully aware of all of the facts and why it is appropriate to them for the goals they're trying to achieve. And then once you've got that plan in place, making sure that you don't let emotions try and take you off that sort of long-term path. But it's a big area, and it's one we've got a few exciting ideas about for this year about what we can do to get a bit better. But it is interesting how much emotion can play a role in finance and personal finance.
Yeah, I think once I realized that about myself, like I have a bad day and I'm like, I'm going to get something for myself as a treat because I deserve it. That's what, when you start picking up on those behaviors on yourself, you can catch yourself. But some people are just, unaware of those things. And it might be like far later in life when they become aware. So I think, being able, I'm glad that, as a company, you're realizing that emotions do, have an effect on people's behavior, especially when it comes to their finances.
It's interesting just on that with time frame. And I was in an investment meeting earlier, looking at a sort of quite a well-known investment survey, and I sort of flicked through to the back of a 20-page presentation, and it said like the average investing time frame of the participants in this survey was 7 months. Big institutional investor, and it just points to this sort of short-term not instant gratification in this example, but short-term mentality. And again, you look at it, and not that I by any means am an expert on social media or TikTok or anything like this, but the amount of videos and content you see there where people are trying to get rich quick. There's this, you can trade Forex and you can make 1,000% if you follow what I do, and you'll be, this time next year, Rodney, sort of stuff. And actually, the best way of getting rich is slowly. Getting rich quick doesn't exist. If it did, everyone would be doing it. And I think a lot of this links into something that I'm passionate about, is sort of financial education. And I've thought about this quite a lot recently, and that it just surprises me so much that in the UK, and it's maybe the same in other parts of the world, youngsters don't have financial literacy or financial education classes at school. We're quite happy to teach youngsters about what an oxbow lake is or the different types of erosion on a riverbed, but you're not equipping them with what's a mortgage or an ISA, or why credit cards are bad in certain instances or good, or whatever it is. And it just seemed like a big gap. And I think this then leads to further problems down the line, is that people aren't as financially literate as maybe they would like to be or should be. And it potentially leads them to making poor financial / investment decisions because they see someone on social media that says, I've made loads of money really quickly by doing this. And they think, well, I'll give that a go. And then it potentially leads to a poor outcome. And it's a big area. And I know a lot of companies and people have started to focus on this more. But I think it's key, and I think it needs a lot of attention, in the press and in the industry.
Yeah, well, it's actually funny that you say that. I'm currently writing something like an opinion piece, just based on I'd noticed there was a big fuss about this influencer who had launched this new crypto game, and he had his followers invest in it and then went quiet. And then it turns out that it was kind of all a scam so that him and his friends could make a lot of money, allegedly. And I kind of wanted to look more into that and see what that was about. And it's basically around parasocial relationships, right? So if you have this person that you watch all the time and they've built a relationship of sorts with their following, you're more likely to trust them. And 61% of people have said that, they will buy products recommended by their favorite influencer. And that's why in my piece, I kind of want to push for more people like you, like professionals, qualified professionals, to be on some of these platforms, like you mentioned, TikTok and YouTube, all those places, being able to like rebuttal when, these people say these, like, I'm invested in Forex and now I'm making, £1,000 a day, or I don't know. And then you can be like, well, this is why that is probably an exaggeration, or, this is just a scam. I think if more professionals were on these platforms, these kinds of things would be combated.
I'd not actually thought of it in that sort of sense, but I think that's a really good point in terms of getting more firms or more sort of qualified professionals on there to rebut these claims and actually deliver the truth about some of these things, that it's not as good as it seems, and these are the potential risks. And I think that's a really good idea, and it links in again with an issue that I think parts of the wealth management sector face is, how do you attract younger clients? Because I know that's a key goal for a lot of companies, is how you attract younger clients. And I think if you can do that, then that is probably a useful thing to aid in attracting younger clients.
Definitely. And finally, what would your advice be to someone who is looking to maybe follow down the same path and get to where you are now?
What would be my advice? That's a really good question. Hard work, and I know that sounds sort of a bit sort of cliched, but you've got to put the hours in, and you've got to be determined and motivated, and you've got to get up each day, and you've got to work hard, basically. And I'd like to come up with something like a lot more inspirational than that, and sort of catchphrasey. But I think it's hard work and determination. Here we go with a nice inspirational catchphrasey one. 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I'm a big believer in that. So that would probably be my advice.
Yeah. Sometimes I always say that the cliches, there's a reason why they're cliched, right? Because they work, they're accurate. But thank you so much for speaking with me today, Dan.
Pleasure, Kimberley.
Okay. Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.